Welcome to the Music Nut Program. I'm John. Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the first edition of It's Chris Whitley Wednesday. For the next several weeks, I will be discussing Chris Whitley's studio albums. I will also touch on his live albums and his compilations as well. Today, I will discuss Chris Whitley's debut album on Columbia Records, Living with the Law, from 1991. Who's Chris Whitley? Chris Whitley was a singer-songwriter from Houston, Texas, who lived from 1960 till 2005. He was a working musician for several years in a variety of bands before he went solo in 1991 when he was discovered by Daniel Lanois. Daniel Lanois is best known for being a producer, most notably for a string of successful and fantastic albums by U2, most notably the Joshua Tree. So he was discovered by Daniel Lanois. He got a record contract with Columbia Records. And when Living with the Law came out, it got a good amount of exposure. He was the opening act for Tom Petty on the Into the Great Wide Open tour for 1991, which was a pretty big album for Tom Petty. And he also had appearances on Late Night with David Letterman as well. He had two songs from this album hit the top 40 on the album-oriented rock charts in 1991, and that was when I discovered his music. Now, Chris Whitley, wonderful singer-songwriter, vocals that could cut to your soul, fantastic guitar player. Any string instrument, really, if he gets his hands on it, he's going to make it his own. He had a very distinct sound. He started out more in that, what we would call an Americana sound, a roots rock sound. Chris was a restless spirit. After this album, he would jump from one genre to the next, even though blues was still at its core. But it was undeniably him. He was an artist, more so than a singer-songwriter. So, Living with the Law. I bought this on cassette in 1991. Bought this on CD a little bit later. This would be his biggest selling album, his first of three albums on Columbia Records. Let's get into the tracks. Excerpt is just an acoustic instrumental intro. It's not very loud in the mix. It's very short. And then we will go right into the title track, which would hit number 28 on the album-oriented rock charts here in the United States. Look out, world. Here comes Chris Whitley. That's what I think. He has a voice like no other, a wonderful guitar player. Excellent, well-written song, strong lyrics. With Chris, he painted a picture with his lyrics. And the music on here, the production, broadens that picture. Excellent track. And I thought it should have been more popular than it was, but maybe it was a little different for 1991, although the production was quite of its time. Chris would later criticize this production, say it was too polished, but made it an more accessible album for the record buying or the CD buying public at that time. But what a wonderful way to open the album. The next track would be the second single from the album, Big Sky Country. This would hit number 35 on the album-oriented rock charts, now called the mainstream rock charts. This is another excellent track with a strong bridge. The first song has a very strong bridge as well, Living with the Law. Great chorus on this, wonderful ending with that guitar line. Very well written. It's a song that really could cut to you. I heard this in a television commercial several years ago. I'm looking all over. I can't find out what it was. But he did get a little bit of exposure there, as he did on the other avenues that I talked about. Excellent track. Kick the Stones. This is a cool mid-tempo, kind of a blues, but not blues rock. The harmonic on this song really adds a lot to it. Excellent track, very memorable. Great playing there on that Nashville guitar from Chris Whitley. Wonderful track, very well written and recorded. Then we go to Make the Dirt Stick, which is this slow, haunting desert blues. Chris's vocal on this is magnificent. Excellent song, wonderful lyric, very cutting. Then we get to Poison Girl. Poison Girl was the third single from the album. When you listen to this song now, you're like, how did this not hit? At least AOR charts. Because it doesn't really have a proper chorus to it, but it's very catchy, very simple, the way it is written. Wonderful bridges on it. Great guitar work on here. Very nice lyrical solo from Chris. Very well done. The song that would close side one on the cassette would be Dust Radio, which has this wonderful slow burn to it that is excellent, very emotional. And then it just brings you in and into that majestic ending, which lasts a little bit of a little while, and you also hear that old transistor radio in the background, and then you hear it at the end of the song. Excellent track. We get to side B on a cassette. We didn't have vinyl or very little vinyl in 1991. We get to the wonderful acoustic blues. That is Phone Call from Leavenworth. I remember writing a review on a Chris Whitley album. I actually reviewed several of his albums on Amazon.com about 20 years ago or so. And what I said about Chris as far as the blues went was he was redefining the blues in 1991. And I was thinking of a song like Phone Call from Leavenworth when I made that statement. Excellent track, wonderful song. Chris's vocal on here, magnificent, as well as the guitar playing. It's just Chris and the guitar on here. That would become a recurring theme throughout his career. And as part of that small but loyal following he had, I loved it. Excellent track. I put this on mixed CDs for several people in my life who were close to me, and they've always loved this song and say, who is this guy? And then I would tell them the Chris Whitley story. I Forget You Every Day. Very strong track. Very emotional. Chris's vocals on here are very emotional, as well as the playing. Wonderful bridge on here. When I talk about Chris's voice, Chris had this voice that could cut to you. It could be really hollow. It could be ragged. It could be somber. It can be tender. Here it's this falsetto, which he also does on the title track. And the falsetto, when he does a falsetto, it sounds like nobody else. Excellent song. Long Way Around. This is more of a blues, but it's got more of a jarring feel to it. It's very ragged again. The guitar playing on here is magnificent. It really adds to the feel of the song. Very well done. Look What Love Has Done is an acoustic blues. Or, I'm sorry, it's an acoustic ballad. This is a great focus on Chris's wonderful voice and his excellent guitar playing. Very strong. Border Town is the grandiose and emotional closer. The production really adds a lot to this song and a lot to several of the songs on here, but here I think it really works very well. Excellent track, wonderful chorus. Again, Chris was a master songwriter. He was a genre hopper, sure. Wonderful guitarist, vocalist, excellent songwriter. That is really proof positive on this last track, as well as every track on this album. So this is Living with the Law from 1991, my second favorite album from 1991. As we go through the albums, there's going to be several of these that I consider favorites, my favorite albums from that particular year. But musically, I'm going to be going in a lot of different directions because all of his albums sound different except for one. And I will go into that when I talk about that album. What do you think of Chris Whitley's music? Have you heard Chris Whitley's music? And if so, what do you think of him? What do you think of his songs, his voice, his wonderful guitar playing? Have you heard Living with the Law or Poison Girl or Big Sky Country? And if you did, what did you think of those songs? Have you seen this CD out in the used bins or the cutout bins? Because this got a big push, but it never charted on the top 200 of the Billboard album charts. So you can still find this album pretty easily, whether it's new or used. But I highly recommend giving it a good home if you see it. Next week, on its Chris Whitley Wednesday, I will talk about the About Face 180-degree turn musically on the second album, the wonderful Din of Ecstasy from 1995. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am honored to be able to talk about Chris Whitley's music. I believe that a YouTube channel should be an extension of who you are. And that's what I'm going to try to do here. And I did it with the Smithereens and Thin Lizzy, of course, but Chris Whitley he's been with me longer than Thin Lizzy. I've been with his music since 91, and it's been 20 years since he passed. And one of my biggest live concert regrets is not seeing him live. He didn't tour this area much. I know he played in Scranton opening for Warren Zevon. I'm still kicking myself for not going. So thank you so much for joining me today. Do what you love, and I'll talk to you soon.